All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. This is Ken Weeb from Sportsnet, and it looks like we have a lot to talk about tonight. There's a lot of figuring out to do, and we'll do our best to figure out what we can, along with all you out in the audience there. But just, I think right off the bat, Ken, this was the Winnipeg Jets' worst game of the season, and what a bad time to be saying that. But give me your take on what you saw.
Yeah, we saw, close to domination, Sean. I think there were stretches in the first period where the Jets, would be happy with parts of their game, but that went south pretty quickly. The Oilers, much like the Toronto Maple Leafs before them, Sean, to me, the Oilers look like a team that have found another level for the game. They're ready for the stretch run, and the Toronto Maple Leafs look ready for the playoffs, and right now the Jets have some answers that they need to get sorted out before they're ready for the playoffs. I think it's that simple to me. I don't think that the Jets played at nearly a high enough level, and that was reflected in the score. I agree with you. I mean, I think that it was a more lopsided game in Montreal, but I would say that this was a poorer effort, especially given the circumstances where the Jets knew that the Oilers came in 1 point behind them, but with 2 games in hand. They have the balance of power has completely shifted in this race for second place.
Oh, I mean, I don't even know if we can say shifted. This is 5 straight losses against the Edmonton Oilers, and we talked about it in our Sportsnet hit right before we came on here, Ken. But the storyline going into every game is finding a way to shut down Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And I get it. No one, for the most part, is shutting down Connor McDavid. He's challenging for 100 points in a shortened season. That is absolutely insane. But at this stage, he is having his way with the Winnipeg Jets. And how concerning is it that with 8 games left in the season, only 1 more to go against the Edmonton Oilers, a team that they are very likely going to be playing in the first round of the playoffs, how concerning is it that the Jets have shown no inkling of an answer for this player?
Well, I mean, Sean, you mentioned it right there. I mean, he's been the toughest player to contain, and when a guy is on pace for, he's going to threaten to get 100 points in a 56-game season, which is absolutely absurd. To the point that our colleague Mark Spector spoke to Wayne Gretzky about the chase itself. And man, oh man, it has to be frustrating. I mean, there have been times where the Jets look like they played them okay, but one turnover or one hope play, as Paul Stastny described it, and the puck's going the other way and it's in the net. I mean, it just seems as though every time the puck is around the net, it's on McDavid's stick and he's finding a way to either put it in himself or get it over to a line mate. I mean, man, 19 points in 8 games, 8 consecutive multi-point games. I mean, I get it, Sean. The Jets are tired of having to talk about it, but the only way that they're not going to be talking about it when it counts is if they find a solution. They have not found an answer. And I mean, man, McDavid had a breakaway that was stopped by Hellebuck. And again, you just have to say a couple of quick things here. 30 points combined now for Draisaitl and McDavid. Tonight they spent a lot of time playing on separate lines. A lot of time it's been tough to go against the nuclear option. Well, tonight both of them found a way to get it done on separate lines. And to me, a couple of just outstanding plays that I think if you weren't looking closely enough or didn't see it on the slow motion replay, the goal, the play that Draisaitl sets up down low is just absolutely ridiculous and exceptional. He puts his skate blade on top of the puck, moves it in one motion to get it on his backhand, slaps the backhand to Adam Larson, who feeds it to Alex Chason for a one-timer. Just absolutely incredibly skilled play. I mean, obviously we knew that things were going to be challenging for the Jets without having Adam Lowry and Nikolai Ehlers in the lineup, but boy, oh boy, what a dynamic display from that duo right now. And it's not just those two for me, Sean. The Oilers played such a suffocating style, if you will. They're just not giving up any, not many chances. It wasn't an any situation, but not many offensive chances. Mark Scheifele scores the power play goal and had a couple of great chances in the slot, but the Jets just unable to generate that zone time because of how great the defensive effort was. They're blocking shots, they're committed, they're on the puck, they're closing, they're shutting down cycles, playing mean in front of the net. Darnell Nurse getting his money's worth, physical play again, and then what a beautiful, tic-tac-toe play to Nurse. I mean, man, oh man, really impressive. And the one thing too, I mean, The Jets saw it in this game as well. The turnover by Forbert, I believe, that led to one of the 2-on-1s. That was Nugent Hopkins to Draisaitl. But every time they thought they had things in a contained situation, next thing you know, the puck is turned over and McDavid's got a breakaway. And man, oh man, Brent, you're right. Dave Tippett's done an awesome job of getting the buy-in from the Oilers. I don't think there was a full buy-in last year. I mean, there was during the regular season, but in the playoff round, or the qualifying round against the Oilers were not committed enough. But it sure looks like they have learned from that situation, and they're playing at a great level.
Well,
can they get? I mean, again, to me, this is simple. The Oilers and the Leafs have found another gear. The Jets have not found that gear yet. They have 8 games to show that they can find it. Because if they can't find it, it's going to be another early exit. Again, I'm not here to say that the last 8 games don't matter, and I've told you this before, Sean. I'm not saying this game doesn't count, but a lot can happen between April 26th and May 18th or 20th, whenever the playoffs get started. But the Jets have a lot longer way to reach when compared to teams like the Maple Leafs and the Oilers right now. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I would look at that game tonight. The Jets could not get their forecheck going. The Oilers were just leaving the zone almost at will. And it's funny, our camera guy in the Sportsnet camera guy in Edmonton, Corey Blashill, here he is. He loves to come on here and he loves to chirp the Jets fans here. And you're going to be hearing a lot from him on this show as we get closer and closer to the playoffs. But the one thing that he told me before this game was that Mike Smith is just so good at helping alleviate the pressure, stopping those ring arounds, getting the puck off to his defenseman. It looks risky, but I'll say this. I'm waiting for the moment, and I've seen this for a number of games now. The Jets just cannot get their forecheck going against this team, and the Jets at their best, that is one of the tools that they have in the toolkit. But to the point of Dave Tippett and the buy-in that he has from this team, I think that they've got a breakout that the Jets have not been able to solve this year, and I think they need to get the X's and O's out and figure out a way to do it, because until that happens, I don't think they're going to have a lot of luck against this team. I'm going back here. I haven't been following the comments, but I wanted to bring this up. BA Split asks, did Stash throw shade on the coaching? Now, let's go over what was said here. I don't think that he was throwing shade on the coaching, but I think he was being brutally honest about where this team is. And it's interesting, Ken, you were talking about there's a big difference between now at this point, mid-April 25s towards the end of the season. But Paul Stastny said that he's seen these problems coming with this team for the last 10 to 15 games, and this is something that will resonate with Jets fans. His belief that this team had been pulling out victories, using opportunistic scoring to get past opponents, leaning on Connor Hellebuck to steal games. But his take is that 10 to 15 games now, this team has been trending in the wrong direction. And now this is what we're getting out of it, that the kind of bottom is collapsed and it's blown up. What was the words he used? It blew up on them tonight or something like that. Or I think that was Paul Maurice who had said that. But where are we at here if the players are openly acknowledging that the compete level is not where it's supposed to be, that the right plays aren't being made? This team looked and sounded lost to me in the post-game commentary, and I don't think that Paul Maurice sounded much different than they did.
Yeah, I think you can appreciate Paul Stastny's honesty, and I don't think that was a shot at the coaching staff. It's a clear shot at the players. The players are the ones, right? The players are the ones that are out there not executing, and he's right. When teams are winning or finding a way to win, then it's tougher to shine a light on some of the issues that are happening or the sins that are being covered up by Connor Hellebuck. There's no doubt about that. I think that players need to step up. There's no doubt about that. They haven't been good enough. That plain and simple. So, to me, they need to find a different level. And again, to me, I don't think that. I understand. Again, coaching is going to come under question. There's no doubt about that. Paul Maurice has talked about the importance of having his team ready. Right now, the Jets they are cheating a little bit. So, and I think they are being told. You don't sit down a star player on a Saturday night game if you're not telling someone that they're cheating. That's a clear example of telling a player that he's cheating, sitting him down for 17 minutes. You're not going to see the Jets sit down 20 players. You can't sit 20 players. So, again, let's see how these guys respond. Let's see where it was.
All right, well, let's bring in Scott Billick here, who the three of us were chatting it out quite a bit in this game. There was lots to talk about at that point. Scotty, how are you doing tonight, bud?
I'm good. I'm set up here for once. I'm not at home. I don't have
there you go.
a pitcher of water or a headband or anything right now. So.
You can share the noise of that little thing that sounds like a helicopter in the background. It's a little later, but like to our audience, it sounds like there's a helicopter landing in here somewhere. I don't know how that thing makes that much noise. I wanted to get both you in on this comment. Ken, I wanted to talk to you about this. I never got the chance before we came on here. But Jeff Monday says, concerning that after Scheifele gets benched, that's how the team responds. I thought that was absolutely crucial because, to your point, that's the coach's way of getting the point across that, things were not good enough. You're being told that you're cheating. This was an opportunity for the entire team to kind of respond here. And there's a moment that is burnt into my brain from that game after Kyle Connor turns the puck over to Connor McDavid, who races down and scores, I believe, his hat-trick goal. His body language was atrocious. I mean, he basically just slumped, didn't really get back into it. And the first thing I thought was, if we're benching Mark Scheifele last game for how he returns and the effort that he shows getting back to the bench on a goal, how are we not benching Kyle Connor for his effort and how he looked on that goal? The fact that this team came back and played the way it did tonight, showed some of the body language that it showed when they were supposed to be bouncing back, I thought was entirely unacceptable. Scott, I'll go to you first and get your take on their inability to bounce back, and then we'll go to Ken.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost, I think the word that somebody threw out in the press box was despondent, right? Like, it was bad. I mean, I don't know how you respond that way to a game. And I know me and Kenny argued this out in the first period about, the Jets had a good start and then it kind of went away. And the problem is, it's like, the Jets had a good start, but they had nothing to show for it. And that's often been the case sometimes. You get a good start, you have nothing to show for it. Edmonton doesn't have a good start, comes on a bit stronger in the second period. Yeah, the Jets are throwing their weight around and doing all that. And the Edmonton Oilers were scoring goals. And so, sure, the Jets were winning 2-1 on the big hits thing, but they weren't winning on the scoreboard and where it matters. And, from there, it just like the second period, it just went downhill. I mean, it just, that third goal, I think, was, that was kind of it. You go down 3-0. I know this team has come back before from that, but that's not really been their MO this season. They're, or at least late. I mean, lately, their MO has just been, I don't know what you call it. I mean, in a vacuum, it's a 4-game losing streak. It's not that big of a deal, but the way they've played, especially in the last couple of games, has been, that's what you worry about. I mean, I'll take this back to 2018-19. I know there was injuries that season too, but the way that the Jets rolled into the playoffs that season was indicative of how they performed once they got into the playoffs. And this is I know Paul Stastny and maybe even Paul Maurice said, this is, maybe this is a good thing. I think it's just Paul Stastny said that, that you can use this as a good thing and maybe this is the right time for them to go through it. I disagree. I mean, you're 9 games out of the playoffs right now. You want to be dealing with adversity. I mean, you better fix it fast then. I mean, Wednesday's coming and they're going to have to June 7th. We're getting there, but it's still a little ways away. But no, I just, I'm trying to, this is a tough one to explain. I don't know how, I mean, nobody really explained. I mean, Andrew Kopp struggled for words. Here's a guy, that was the one, maybe Andrew Kopp was the shortest out of the 3 people who talked today. And I think that speaks volumes because Andrew Kopp
does often, it ever?
I think Andrew Kopp often has the answer, and tonight he just didn't have it. And he tried to say, we're gonna grab our balls or whatever he said and go to work and
on our balls,
yeah, exactly, right. And that is, it's a great quote. I get it, but I mean, Andrew Kopp was fishing for something to say. He didn't have it. I mean, he couldn't explain it. Paul Stastny, he was able to kind of put words together but he also said, I mean, at one point he said that they were embarrassed about letting Connor Hellebuyck hang out to dry there. And they did. I mean, you could maybe, I pegged the third goal. I think it was the third goal, McDavid's, the one that
the wrist shot, the change up.
Yeah, the wrist shot. But then I looked at the goal and I'm like, man, that's a hell of a goal to score, right? Like, he waited out Pionk's stick and then kind of threw the change up on Helly right through his 5-hole. I mean, that's a good goal. And I have a tough time blaming Hellebuck when he's facing 2-on-1s with the Draisaitl. I mean, the Jets know what's coming from this team, and they just weren't able to stop it tonight.
Ken?
Yeah, I mean, and again, the fact that the Jets are hanging Hellebuck out to dry is deeply concerning, Scott. I mean, he has, as you mentioned, your words are he's covered up a lot of the Jets' sins, and when a star goalie gets pulled in 2 of the last 3 starts against teams that are in first place and now in second place in the division that the Jets are trying to come out of, that is certainly not a good sign for them. They need to respond. Again, you find out what teams are made of when they go through hard times. The Jets made a habit of bouncing back and not losing 2 in a row in regulation for almost all the year. But you're right, Scott. I mean, the only time the Jets lost 3 in a row in the 2017-18 season was in the series against Vegas when they won the series opener, then lost 4 in a row. Right now, they're missing that swagger. I know Andrew Kopp said it was temporary, but I mean, he also kind of let it slip that you have to trick yourself into feeling confident. So that's something the teams don't want to be feeling. You don't want to go into games hoping, and when teams are successful, they go in with swagger. And right now, the Jets have to find a way to reincorporate that swagger or reinvigorate themselves, because right now they don't have any of it. And they're having trouble when they go to find it. It's not on the shelf for them. They're having trouble or getting an appointment for it, if we're using our current parlance.
Right. And I think, I don't know if you guys have talked about, maybe Sean will talk about it if you haven't already, but I think there is something to say about the whole depth thing. And have you talked about that yet, Sean?
We haven't yet. We'll get into it. I wanted to touch on a point that you were making there about Andrew Kopp. You're entirely right. Andrew Kopp is able to break down and dissect every game and give you an idea of what happened, what went wrong, where they need to go with utter confidence. And he seemed lost tonight. He was speaking in cliches, dig deep, strap on your balls, all these kind of things that you were saying are the kind of things that players say when they either don't want to tell you the answers or they don't have answers. And the fact of the matter is, typically with Andrew Kopp, he always wants to tell you the answers. It's what he loves doing. It's why he's up in front of the media all the time. He seemed absolutely lost out there. And, I mean, if we're going to go and break down what each of the guys were saying, I mean, Stastny as well. I mean, even when you dug down, I mean, I'd asked him the question, okay, everything's been going kind of in the wrong direction for 10 or 15 games now. And if you realize that, and if there's an understanding, and I think there has been an understanding from Paul Maurice that they need to get it to a different kind of game. So I don't think it's like this has crept up on them. I think they haven't liked where they've seen things going. But if they haven't liked where things have been going, why is this not getting better? Why is it getting worse? Why is this going in a downward spiral at this stage if they know the problem, have seen the problem coming, and need to be addressing it by this point? And I do think that when I asked him that question, I think he started falling back into the cliches. We got to dig deep and do all these different kind of things.
He said as much.
Yeah, hang on a second, though. I just think that, like you also touched on it at the beginning, Sean, I don't think for a second that Andrew Kopp doesn't know the problem, but he's not about to back the bus over his teammates in this situation. For me, that's also a sign of leadership. Sure, Stastny was able to say this has been slipping, but for me, I think that it was more a matter of Andrew Kopp biting his tongue than not being able to figure it out.
Okay, then what's wrong? What's wrong here right now?
Oh, the turnovers.
If it's obvious to them.
No problem. There's not enough There's not enough commitment, Sean. There's not enough commitment.
So over the last, and we can blanket that over the last 10 to 15 games?
Well, I mean,
and that's part of the problem. Like, so when Stastny reveals that it's been 10 to 15 games, like, that's a red flag to me. No, like, I mean,
it's massive. It's
to
massive.
Me, I mean, that's it. Like, I mean, why? And to Sean's point, like, why aren't they coming out of it? Right? Like, and maybe Kenny, you got a different opinion on it, but it's just like, I mean, it's not just turnovers. Like, there's fundamental hockey problems here that they don't have, and I mean, defensive issues. The lines are. I mean, Sean made the point. And I know we're getting to this, but like, if the Jets are so good depth wise, or even not even that. Let's go. They have experimented with lines all season. Sean made this point in the press box. Credit to him on this. I'm not. It's just like, you have all these different scenarios that you've planned for, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
where was it tonight?
Yeah.
Connors didn't even shift the lines. He just let his team eat 6 goals. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'll say what I said up in the press box.
Yeah.
I mean, this entire season has been about blending the lines so that if we get to the time of season where it matters and you run into injuries, that you've got places that you can go to and you've got built-in chemistry to go back to. So why are we not going back to that at this stage? Is this not an important juncture when you've lost 3 straight games, when you feel like your game has been devolving for 10 to 15 games, when second place is on the line? Is this not the time to be pulling out of your back pocket the different combinations that you've earned and found over the years by blending the lines the way that you have? It makes no sense to me that they landed with 9 games left in the season, that after a couple of injuries they landed on 3 fairly out of nowhere lines that I know there's a couple pairings that have gone well together, but these lines, and I said it before the game, Ken, these lines caught me entirely off guard. They did. I mean, why are we not going with Scheifele, Wheeler, and Connor to give at least some stability on that top line to go out and make that push? I get that the third line wasn't where you wanted it to be, but if the entire idea was to have places to go when things went south, well, they've gone south. And we haven't gone back to anything that we've seen before earlier in the season. And it just doesn't make sense to me based on what the plan was supposed to be.
Well, I mean, we talked about it in the pregame show also. I think the reason why I tried something different is because they've so far have not found a solution for trying to contain Connor McDavid. So he wanted to try something different, which to me makes sense. If it hasn't worked before, all of our commenters have been saying that they shouldn't use Wheeler, Scheifele, and Connor together against McDavid. So of course he tried something different. I mean, to me, that's coaching.
The same?
Pardon me?
Then you keep the deep pairings the same. Like, here's the thing. So, like, it's almost like he's out coaching himself. And I don't have the years of experience coach or any at all. But you change the forward lines, but you're still married to Morrison and Pullman. You don't put Pionk or DeMello there. You're playing Jordy Ben, which is beyond me at this point. This whole thing, like, this platoon thing is a disaster. I don't know why they're doing it. Logan Stanley has more upside than Jordy Ben. Billy Heinola has more upside than Jordy Ben. Why aren't either of those guys playing? If you want to platoon it, put the competition between those guys. Because, and I get it, it's a third pairing. But the problem is, if you have a reasonable third pairing, then they could actually move DeMello maybe out of there, or move, Pionk or somebody. But the problem is, you want to play Jordy Ben to see if he can deal with Connor McDavid. No, I mean, why? He can't do it. Half the guys on this roster have struggles with him, if not more. But put the guys that have more upside in the lineup. They're not doing that right now. And I'm not saying like wholesale changes here. I mean, I'm just saying, why is Jordy Ben being considered at this point as an older player who came in, and we all would agree that he was going to be the 7th team man, right? I mean, I think we all were kind of unanimous on that in our whatever. So why is it now a competition? Logan Stanley was blossoming as a good third pairing defenseman with some physicality in him, and puts pucks on net, which this team struggles with, especially from the back end. Why is he out of the lineup? I don't get it. You need more offense. They scored 1 goal, and it was a garbage time goal. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter. He scores 6. They might as well just not score. It didn't matter if they scored 1 goal. It makes no difference to me in terms of the outcome or how bad they looked on the ice. But like, I just think there's a bit of an overcoating. You don't need a competition right now. I don't understand. Maybe Kenny, if you have a differing opinion, tell me. I just don't understand. Or Sean even, I don't understand the idea that you're trying to figure out who your third pairing defenseman is going to the playoffs. Why aren't they just running with Stanley? Obviously, the ship has sailed a little bit on Billy Heinola here, I think. But I just don't understand why they aren't letting Logan Stanley play and get him in. Because if you're thinking that Jordy Ben's going to take over, I mean, it's a kind of a fool's game at that point. You might as well just run your top 2 pairings and play them 30 minutes each a night.
Yeah, I mean, I personally didn't mind Jordy Ben's game tonight, but again, I'm not arguing with what you're saying. I think I'd like to see Billy Heinola in the game on Wednesday. He's played 2 games here for the Manitoba Moose. I think it's pretty apparent that the Jets maybe have some plans to use him. Otherwise, I mean, again, you want to get him some work because he had gone with only playing 1 game in a month. I think there's no better time than to try it. I certainly understand why the coaches would rather use someone in-house that has played more games. But I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, Maurice did mention at one point that he'd like to see Heinola against the Oilers. I think that his puck-moving ability and vision would be something that could help the Jets against the Oilers, a team that's given them trouble. But I mean, other than that, I mean, I think the Jets did go to they switched the pairings in the third period. Again, I think it was probably too late by that point. But again, it's not even a matter of DeMello anymore. I mean, nothing wrong with DeMello. I think DeMello's had a strong year. I'd actually like to see Pionk and Morrissey together at some point here. And I think that maybe Dylan DeMello is a guy that can kind of unlock Derek Forbert a little bit, because obviously his level has dipped since a pretty good start. So that's something that I would look at if I was the coach. I know I'm not the coach and don't have the experience of the coaching staff, but that's my sideline situation. And then I'd like to see Heinola play on Wednesday as well. But right now, a lot of players need to look themselves in the mirror and know they need to be better.
I'll say this. This is a good point Kenny's water bottle makes here. It's a great picture. The problem isn't who's the 6D. It's deeper than that. There is something to be said about the fact that this was a 6-1 blowout, and the deepest forward unit in the NHL had no answers here tonight. Connor Hellebuck has been pulled for the two of his last 3 starts, right, Ken? Yep. But that we're sitting here and talking about this 6th defenseman issue like this is the be-all and the end-all of this. Like, this is... I will say this. I'll go into this, and I've been on record as saying this. I didn't like the idea of them messing around with the D at this point. You touched on that, Scotty. I had that. I think that with a guy like Logan Stanley, people assume that these players are robots, right? And that they just come out of the lineup and they go back in and they just pick up right where they left off. So Logan Stanley is a guy who's trying to carve out his spot in the NHL, had done a pretty good job of it, I thought, throughout the season. And I didn't like this late season meddling like this. I didn't think it was a good idea, but I mean, we go back to the idea that the general manager of this hockey team wanted to see that, requested it. So we go down that road. Is that why this is being done? I don't know the answer to that. I know that before that happened, it looked like there was at least some solidity on the back end. And I will say this, on a back end that we all knew was going to be, the weakest part of this roster. The fact that they've got the stability that they got out of that back end through the majority of the season, and that now cracks seem to be forming. I don't think it helped to be messing around and jogging players around. But I do think, Ken, that we are in the situation where now, you said this a while ago, Pionk and Morrissey was a drum that you were going to start beating down the stretch here. And at this stage, it makes sense because it looks like things aren't working. You touched on Forbert. His game seems to be dipping. He needs some kind of injection to get him going again. But boy, oh boy, I hate the idea. And Ken, I know you've said to me that, hey, it's a shortened season, things are different this year, but 10 to 15 games that this team doesn't like that it's played in a row. We're talking about a quarter of the season that they've felt that the chinks in the armor are starting to show and that it's problematic. So to me, 8 games left to be spending that time trying different things and moving stuff around. I mean, maybe there's no other option, but that is, in my mind, a recipe for disaster heading into the playoffs, that we are 8 games out and trying to figure out who you are heading into the playoffs, when it looks like the Edmonton Oilers know exactly who they are, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are in a situation where they're starting to look at like they know exactly who they are. The Jets are starting to look like the Montreal Canadiens, who don't have a very good idea of who they are, and it just seems to be a vast advantage for the Edmonton Oilers that they have 10 games left in the season and have a very good peg on how they need to play, and the Jets don't, and that those two teams are very likely going to be playing in the first round. Do you have a problem with that, Ken?
Well, I mean, I would, you like to play the devil's advocate with me, so I'm going to play it with you. The Oilers inserted Dmitry Kulikov today to improve their defense core, and that's exactly what he did. So I don't think it's too late to incorporate pieces that are in the organization and that the Jets already have an idea of, where other teams are incorporating players from outside the organization where they don't know where they'll fit in. And much to your point about depth, and let's dig into the forward depth a little bit more. I mean, Kyle Dubas is not only planning for the end of the regular season, Riley Nash is not going to play a game for the Toronto Maple Leafs until the playoffs. But when he arrives, he's going to be pushing someone to stay in the lineup. And if he replaces someone, that means an Alex Kerfoot or somebody else, a Joe Thornton or Mikheyev or Engvall. Like, those guys are smoothly moving guys in and out of the lineup, and it's not hurting them right now. I mean, Ryan McLeod jumped in for the Oilers today. I thought he looked pretty good for a young player. Yes, he got hit by Dylan DeMello, but I thought it was a pretty efficient game by him. So, again, I understand continuity would be key for any team, but in the course of this season, a lot of teams are moving parts around, and some of it's deck chairs, some of it's star players. I mean, I think it's just the way it goes.
Sure. But then why isn't it working here? Like, what's the reason that it doesn't work here? And then if you want to start moving players in and players out, why aren't you looking at bringing up a Sandberg? I mean, we got 8 games left. You can start burning these recalls off of the COVID list, right? Like, you can start doing that now. Why don't you bring up Sandberg? Where's David Gustafsson? Like, if you want to actually...
Well, they've used... I guess today might have been emergency for Tonin.
Okay,
I think they've
right?
just used one on Hainala so far. So
right. But so if you want to make the changes, if you want, like, then make the changes. But if the only change that they're making is moving Jordy Ben or Logan Stanley or Ville Heinola into the lineup. That's the only change they're making.
I wanted to respond to that, and I don't want to get Ken. You can get into the Sandberg stuff if you want to, but to your point about why isn't it working? And someone earlier on had suggested to me that, like, all coaches are constantly moving things around. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I don't think it's happening like it's happened in this market. And if you want to talk an idea of changes and why sometimes it'll work, well, throughout the season when we've seen the Edmonton Oilers and we've seen some different versions of lines, but Connor McDavid usually has Jesse Puljujarvi right beside him there. So the idea of having a unit and cycling one person in and out of that unit, I'm okay with that idea. And I guess maybe if you take a look at tonight, so the Dubois and the Wheeler pairing, I've liked in the past, so that works for me. And I guess we've seen elements of Scheifele and Kopp that have worked, but I mean, we've seen those work partially at different times of the season. What you see between Jesse Puljujarvi and Connor McDavid is Jesse Puljujarvi knows exactly what he needs to do on that line at all times. You can see it. He's clearly, Connor McDavid is going in. If he gets pinched off on the boards, he rings it around, and Jesse Puljujarvi's right there for it. That doesn't change for Jesse Puljujarvi if they put someone else on that line with him. His role doesn't change, even though you may tweak a guy in here and there. The entire idea of all three of these Jets lines, the first, second, and third line, entirely changed from the last game. The philosophy of how each of those lines was going to play entirely changed. So there's not stability in having a pair and cycling someone in and out to see if he works with that style. It is an entirely new style. It's a recreation of what you want those lines to be. And so to the point that someone made earlier on, and to your point, Scott, of why I don't think that it's working, I thought, and I said so at the beginning of the game, Ken, on our pregame show, I thought they were set up to fail tonight, having all those different lines like that, trying to figure a way out of it against a team that they had yet to figure out yet. I see your point, Ken. Try something new, but maybe not try something new. Maybe take elements of what you know has worked in the past and try and build on that, not roll the dice with three entirely different lines and see if that will stick against the best hockey player in the world tonight. It just did not make sense to me.
I guess the only counterpoint to that would be, you're 2-5 against them coming into this game, so nothing's really worked. And yes, they've played well, in some of those games against them.
It's building. It's building. Stick around, folks, because it's coming. But I may be told to wake up before this show is over.
I don't even have to tell you anymore. You just you just self-police yourself, Sean.
I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. If I blink twice, it means wake up.
But I guess I sort of agree with Kenny on this, because nothing's really worked against the Oilers. So maybe just give them a completely different look that they'd never seen before. But I guess to Sean's point, though, I'm kind of playing both sides here. But to Sean's point is, I mean,
where'd you learn that move? Where'd you learn that move?
But there's nothing there, right? For Edmonton's just going to pick apart lines that have nothing in, like basically those guys had nothing in common with one another, right? Like, I mean, this is like, it's a bad blind date or whatever, right? Like, I mean, that's kind of what these lines were. There was, like Shawnee said, I agree that they were kind of set up to fail because of the fact that there's just nothing there. I mean, there's just there was no. I didn't find really any chemistry. Maybe the top line had a little bit. I think that's partly due to Scheifele actually playing. I thought Scheifele responded well tonight. And of course, and I thought he responded well in the third. Scheifele can do those things. He can bind a line together with his play. But I just didn't see that anywhere else down the lineup. It was just a lot of chasing the puck, you're basically playing in your own zone, and that was it. And but there was no change. Like, there was no in-game change from Reese. I don't know what he was looking for at that point. Like, what are you waiting to see there? Some, a hint of chemistry, 10 minutes into the third period? Well, at that point, what does it matter? You're already down 6-0 or 6-1, whatever it was at that point. Like, I don't know. It wasn't. It worked maybe in the first 10 minutes of the game, Kenny. We talked about that, but after that, it wasn't working anymore. And at that point, maybe why wouldn't you? I don't know. Paul Maurice has been married to this, Connor, Scheifele, Wheeler line. He didn't go back to that in this game. That was strange a little bit to me too, because when you're searching for goals, that's where he would often go, and he didn't go to that tonight. And so, what was that? Like, I just don't understand the philosophy behind what he was doing there. Was he trying to teach them a lesson? Was he trying to find, again, another line experiment? What was the philosophy behind letting those guys get feasted upon, just like Connor Hellebuyck was?
That's a great question. Go for it, Ken.
He told us before the game this was something that he wanted to land on. And I understand after 2 periods, he probably wanted to try a few other things. I don't think he's going to be married to these lines necessarily. Again, based on today, they didn't really show him any reason to stick with them. But again, Sean, just the flip side of what you're saying. I mean, I just don't know where else. I mean, what else? This just sort of, to me, reinforced something that we've been talking about a lot. How much the Jets miss Adam Lowry when he's not there in terms of the physical nature and his head-to-head ability. And again, Scott, you've been talking about Nikolai Ehlers for several years now. The Jets really found out what life looks like without Nikolai Ehlers. So this would be one of those signs where...
how many zone injuries did you see tonight that were like kind of fluid and looked good? Like,
well, it was dumping all night, and I think we talked about it before.
The Oilers take that away, though, right?
Entirely. Exactly. I thought their break-ins played entirely into the Oilers' hands. Mike Smith was busy as heck, and I don't think you were here when we said it, Scott, but our camera guy in Edmonton told me before the game, Mike Smith, when he's going out and playing the puck like that, the Oilers are winning those games because he's getting the puck to the guys he's releasing, and you could see the Jets just could not turn. They couldn't get in on the forecheck. They weren't turning over pucks. They weren't getting sustained pressure. It was, and it's impressive to see them do it. And like I'd said, I think I'd made the point. I think that, the Jets really need to revisit the X's and O's on how they're going to bottle that team up. But they needed more in that zone tonight, most definitely.
And I think even the physicality in this game, like, it was good to see. But it just wasn't, like, you're hitting Kyler Yamamoto and whoever else that got drilled in the one thing. Those just aren't those. It's Dave Manouk over here, by the way. Leave it it's for my bounty or what? Anyways, but anyway, I just
focus, Scotty.
Yeah, well, that's the problem.
I can help you here. The Harkins hit is a good play. He is in on the forecheck. I mean, that didn't lead to the goal. I mean, that was actually a smart place to hit. And DeMello's hit on McLeod was a smart place to hit also. I mean,
But are you hitting the right
goal.
guys?
Sorry?
Right? You want to take Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl off
Oh
the
man,
game,
no.
not
I mean,
McLeod
but
and
Harkins is not out against McDavid, so he has to hit the guy that's across from him, which is exactly what he did.
Right. But then where were the other guys? Like, why? The key, and we've talked about this before, with a guy like Matthews and a guy like McDavid, they don't like being touched, so touch them, right? Like, I mean, it's hard against McDavid. Granted, I mean, I've never played against Connor McDavid, and if I did, there'd be no point. There's no point in me even dressing. But like, the point is, like, you've got to find ways to touch the guy, throw him off his game, get him pissed off a little bit, but in a negative way, right? Not mad that he's not playing well, but mad that he's getting touched. These guys don't like that stuff. And yes, McDavid's slippery, but start hitting the right guys. Like, I get it. You throw a big hit. That big hit against McLeod, there was a goal right after it. It didn't matter. The Oilers didn't care. They went.
There was a penalty right after it.
Sure, but
there was a goal after the Harkins hit.
That's the one. Sure, yeah. But they went and settled the game on the scoreboard when that was happening. You want to get in the grill of the star players, the ones that are doing. McDavid had a 4-point night tonight. He was unimpeded. He did whatever he wanted to do tonight. That can't be happening. And
he doesn't put himself in a position to get hit, though, Scotty. And he did get hit on the first shift, and it looked like he actually jammed his knee. And you saw what he looked like as he went to the bench. And in fact, the hit might have woken him up. It got him going in a 4-point night.
Maybe.
Sean, I know what you're saying, but he does not put himself in position to be hit. That's one of the beautiful things about Connor McDavid. How often did Gretzky get hit? Almost never.
Right, but then play him dirty. Right? Start hacking them. You've got to do something because tonight didn't work.
Well, it's what the Canadians did against them. Right? And you're seeing the results from that.
Where's the pest on this team? Go out and be the pest then. Right? Where's the Brendan Gallagher? Somebody's got to step up into this role. Because if you're going to let Connor McDavid do this in the playoffs, it's over. Pack it up, go home. Right? What's the point of even going to the games then? Right? Because if you need to find a way to contain McDavid. Because otherwise other team will do it. But if you don't think that if you can't show you can contain McDavid, or at least take him out of the game, and they've done it against Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, so they know how to do it. And McDavid's a better player, and Draisaitl, you'd probably say those two are better as a pairing, right? I get the cheat code thing, I understand, but if you think that if they think that Connor McDavid's a cheat code and they can't contain him, then it's over. It's already done. It's game over at this point because you're probably playing him in the first round. So yeah, anyways.
Kenny, question from the audience here. Habs and Leafs are able to frustrate 97. Why can't the Jets?
I mean, they have on several occasions, and then in the last 5 minutes, he's taken him to the cleaners. So I think there have been a couple times when the Lowry line actually did quite a good job. And I think even the last home game here, we saw it for 2 periods. The Lowry line did a great job against McDavid. He only had 1 shot on goal. But then in 1 shift against the Scheifele line, Kyle Connor made the decision to go behind the net against McDavid. Puljujarvi scored, and that was it. That was his only 5-on-5 point. So, yeah,
I think
the Jets have done it at spurts, but they haven't been able to do it for 60 minutes. And if you can't do it for 60 minutes, then you're right. Then it's awfully difficult to contain the Oilers.
But if you can do it for 55 minutes and give up 1 McDavid goal instead of 3, and you score 3 or 4 of your own, then you're all right, right? Like, I'm not saying that Connor McDavid isn't going to eat every night. He's probably going to on most nights. Look at the season he's having. But you have to do something to contain him for way better than you did tonight. Because tonight,
no doubt about that.
A horrible example of what you need to do against a guy that skilled.
Well, what about this idea, and you touched on it, Scott, but people picking up on this, you control McDavid by making smart plays and being in the right position, not playing dirty. I mean, if you get to the stage, especially, isn't today's NHL supposed to be the game that you don't go down that road? Do you know what I mean? Like in in the 90s and early 2000s, yeah, you'd get into a playoff series with the team and you'd be like, okay, well, if you can't beat them up, right? That was the idea. But I mean, is that a suggestion that we should even be having in this day and age, that the response to taking on the best player?
We were having this discussion on Saturday night. The league has kind of allowed a little bit more of this, right? Is this?
I agree.
Discussion that we've had. So
we had it after last game, yeah. But I mean, to Ken's point, like how do you catch a guy to do that? He's constantly in the open ice. How do you catch him to do that? The only way you play dirty against Connor McDavid is if you cross-check or slash him on the way by, because he's not hanging around in the front of the net to take your abuse, right? He gets out, he circles out, he gets on the perimeter, and then dashes inside. So it's interesting because, you know, a lot of times players like that, they end up being perimeter players, right? And that's where he'll go. He'll go to the perimeter to get some space and get the puck, and then he'll challenge you to go just straight at the net and beat you with speed. And then as soon as you react to him, he'll either dish it off or he'll cut through and right by you. But this isn't a guy who's hanging out in front of the net and allowing Derek Forbert to cross-check him in the back 5 or 6 times. That's not what he's doing.
But that also speaks to the larger, I guess, maybe fundamental issue of this team is positioning, is the 5-man defensive effort that they put forth. Because it doesn't take much for that to kind of unravel on a lot of plays. And I know McDavid plays a big part in that. But if you can do it against Matthews and Marner, like why isn't that same sort of thing kind of applied to the, like, there's got to be something out of that ability to stop Matthews and Marner that they've shown that you can apply to McDavid and Draisaitl.
You have to find a way to sort of interfere with them, Scott. I think back to you have to prevent him from getting up to speed, and that's tough to do because his 0 to 60 is so incredible. I mean, this dates back to the Young Stars tournament where Connor McDavid only played 1 period because he got drilled by Jake Virtanen. Here's the issue. Connor McDavid coasting without even accelerating is often faster than most players in the National Hockey League. So to have a gap or to have a guy in a position where you can deter him from getting to full speed is awfully difficult to do. But that is exactly the only way that you can try to contain him, by having a body. Like, I'm not saying be dirty, but you need to be able to chip him or get a piece of him before he gets up to speed, and the Jets just weren't able to do that tonight.
Guys, I want to go back to that idea of depth, because if you take a look on this roster and the idea of you know, when they had injuries, they were supposed to be able to cover it off. I see Mark Scheifele, I see Blake Wheeler, I see Paul Stastny, I see PLD, I see Kyle Connor. I mean, there's a number of guys who should be able to step up and almost single-handedly make an effort or make control the outcome of a game. Why is that not happening?
Jets needed to be more patient. Let's go back to Paul Stastny and his commentary, what he talked about in terms of the Jets were not patient enough in the offensive zone. The Oilers did such a good job in terms of their defensive structure that there were too many of these hope plays into the crease that turned into turnovers, that turned into the back of the net. That was something they got frustrated by. We know you can't do that against the Oilers. If you feed their transition game, again, they'll take you to the cleaners, and that's just the way that it is. So the Jets just didn't play within their structure, and that's something that it won't look good in the film room tomorrow, that's for sure.
That's a good point by Bobby, by the way, that you have on the screen right now. I mean, they didn't win that game, but Ehlers did a lot in that game to throw a bunch of guys off the game. Maybe not the right guys in a sense, like maybe it's got to be Matthews or whatever instead of Joe Thornton. But I do agree with that. I mean, I think there is, anyways, I think the problem is, and just to go back a little bit to earlier, Sean, you were talking about Adam Lowry. And they're missing Adam Lowry in a big way right now.
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, it's huge, right? Like, you can't even go to that. He's one of those guys that's able to get in the wheelhouse of a McDavid or a Draisaitl. Like, he's good at that. That's his role, and he's carved that out over several years now against the league's top lines. That's a big blow. And, you know, if they can get him back by Wednesday or whatever, I mean, that's a huge
he won't play Wednesday. I don't think he goes from the gold jersey. Right, I don't see him before the road trip.
Sorry, I was on the Pallister call today, so
yes,
I
you were.
the context of the practice. But my point is, like, I mean, you know, they were missing two like key elements of their game tonight, and I understand that guys didn't step up, but the loss of Ehlers was huge, and the Lowry line is, or just Lowry being honest. But yeah, and to your point, Sean, like, you know, somebody's got to step up. Or Kenny, sorry. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, there was a bunch of, I think Mark Scheifele had a good game, but there were some no-shows tonight. And, I mean, I know Paul Maurice doesn't like that word, but I think that, you know, Pierre-Luc, I mean, needs to step up at this point. And I've preached and have written about, you know, patience with this guy, but you need it right now. You need it from him. He's got to find that extra gear. Kyle Connor's been in a bit of a, you know, we would say slump, I suppose. it hasn't really been working well for him. I would think in overall in a little while. I think there needs to be more from him. Blake Wheeler, I mean, I thought he had good burst in the Toronto game, coming off the concussion there. But then, again, it's just the guys that you expect, and you can't be expecting, Nate Thompson or Trevor Lewis or Andy Perreault to find an opportunistic goal. I mean, yeah, they need the top lines to be scoring, and they're just not right.
I mean, the thing with Dubois, though, I mean, he just had 2 good games against the Leafs. So, I mean, I'm with you. He wasn't as effective tonight. But again, if that's the level, you want it to be at that level for all 9 games. But
yeah, I guess the point is, 2 good games, but they have nothing to show for that, right? No point. And I know it's not just on Dubois. I mean, they need a lot of guys to step up right now, and it's just not. It's not there. It's
got to be a collective. You're right. I mean, you're not going to replace Ehlers with one guy, so you're going to have to get.
But there doesn't
scoring
seem to be
throughout the lineup
banding together here. They've talked all season kind of about this great room and all this stuff. We haven't been in it, obviously, so we don't know if that's the case or not. But they're talking about individuals playing. It's not a team. They're not playing a team game. They're not playing for each other. Where is that right now? I thought that was what they told us was their team identity, and where is that at the moment?
Look at this point here, guys, because you know what, we go down the PLD road a lot on this show, probably too much, Ken. I've had people say that to me in the past, but I mean, how could you expect Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's the youngest player on this team, who's the newest player on this team, how could you expect him to be an impact player if he's just constantly passed from line to line to line to line mate to line mate to line mate? I mean, when something works with a guy like that, should they not be locking down on that and sticking with it for as long as they possibly can? Again, back to my point about moving things around. I know that he did well in the past with Blake Wheeler, but you're just talking about getting him into a situation where he had a good couple of games, the last 2 games, and then it's a change for him again. How does a guy like that build consistency in the environment that he's been brought into this year?
Again, Ehlers wasn't available, though, today. So, I mean, that was probably the driver on the line for him playing well, right? And then you moved Stastny to center. So, I mean, I think he was going to be getting different line mates regardless. But, I mean, hey, I'm not arguing. I'm just saying that he was going to be missing one for sure. And they needed to try something else in terms of, center depth.
I get your explanation for tonight. I'm talking about the entire year. You know what I mean? It's just, maybe there was a place that they had to go tonight, but I guess I'm just making the point about Pierre-Luc Dubois. And if we're trying to find, shouldn't there at least be consistency for a player like that? I get if they're going to go in different directions all over the lineup, but shouldn't it be an effort at this point by Paul Maurice? And again, I understand the moves tonight, but shouldn't there have been a decision at some point throughout the season to try and find something that worked for him and stick with that? If it was Nick Ehlers before, if it was the first time he was up with Mark Scheifele and Blake Wheeler, shouldn't finding a spot that this guy has found he fits in be paramount and let him build his confidence through that?
Sure, but I mean we've gone down this road a lot too. There just hasn't been enough consistency from the players in the top 6 this year. There's just no way around that. There haven't been enough nights when both of the lines have been going. The different combinations, there just hasn't been enough steady combinations in terms of something that a coach can write on the board in permanent marker instead of pencil.
Best case scenario, Leafs and Oilers beat each other up and then we have a chance. That's probably not going to happen. I mean, the Leafs are locked up in the first division. I mean, I don't know about you guys. To me, it looks pretty obvious that it's going to be the Jets and Jets and the Oilers in the first round. Let's get into this because we're going to run out of time and we want to shut this down around the 1 hour mark. What's the way out of this? And I'm going to preface this by saying I think about last season when the Jets were going into their week off and they lost 5 straight games. They came out of that Ken, I can't remember. Did they lose the first one back, or I think that was a couple seasons before that against Boston? Regardless, over that 5-game losing stretch that they were having, In the third game of that they lost, Paul Maurice said, no, I'm seeing signs of us turning our game around. By the fourth game, he said, no, that's the game. I know we lost, but if we keep playing that game, we're going to be fine. The fifth game, they lost, and he said, no, we're on the right track. Things are going to turn around here. It was a very sunny disposition. There was confidence. When they came back from their break, the players had all bought into that. They felt that they were playing the right way, and they asked them how they needed to play. They'd say, we need to play exactly how we played the last couple of games that we lost in those 5 straight losses. I'm not hearing that here. I'm hearing a team that is frustrated and lost and doesn't know where they're going from here. What can the Jets draw on in recent history with, you know, the lineup that they've had here to point to and say there's a way out of this?
Yeah, for me that's an easy one. Yeah, even though it doesn't seem, it seems like the forest through the trees right now. But the template was on display against the Toronto Maple Leafs at the end of that road trip. That's the last game the Jets have actually played well in. But in that game, yes, Matthews was not there. The Jets were solid defensively. They got good goaltending, and they found a way to generate without cheating for offense. And the Jets need to get back to that, because when they get away from their template, then they're just a mediocre team, right? I mean, that's the thing. When they don't play at that level, or they don't get elite level goaltending, then they're just a mediocre team, and that's been on display during this losing streak. But one other thing too, Sean, I want to get to before, where do we stand in terms of the rest versus rhythm for Hellebuck right now? How many of these games should he start, and how many games does he need to start?
Good question.
We talked about this all year. Brossoit's been good enough so that Hellebuck doesn't have to be taxed by the time the playoffs start. How many games should he start?
Well, I mean, so are you suggesting that he's at the end of his rope, that he's tired here, that they've gassed him?
I'm not saying that yet, but
I
I certainly wouldn't play him 6 of 8. But again, now he's been pulled twice in 3 games, so I know he's going to want to get some action, but he's still the busiest goalie in the NHL.
Right.
So I think it's a delicate balance right now. I think that the Jets should start Brossoit on Friday against Montreal. I think I would give him another chance to get back on the horse against Edmonton, but then give Brossoit the game in Montreal.
Yeah,
I mean,
I might see it the other way around. Like, I mean, do any of us think that the Jets are going to turn it around next game? And if we do, then sure, yeah. Then
things change fast, though. Let's not forget. I mean, I understand
that, but unless Adam Lowry's playing next game, and we've already suggested that he won't. I mean, if Adam Lowry's not, I don't know. I mean, if tonight was a response to Hellebuck and Scheifele being benched, if you think that it's going to happen again on Wednesday, why would you even entertain the thought of putting Hellebuck in the net? Just put Brossoit in there and let him eat it, you know, if that's the case, and then let Connor rebuild whatever he needs to rebuild against Montreal.
I mean, he had a 4-day break between games, and he's now been pulled in 2 of the 3 since. That's why I would play him.
Well,
he had a break.
But if we're talking about if he needs rest, then don't you want him to have a few of these days? Like, if that's the thing, then you play Hellebuck all the way to the end, right? Like, because if you think he needs to play all the time to keep up his level of play, I don't think that's true. But if that's the case, then you play him as many times as you can down the stretch, right? Like, isn't that counter to what you're saying, Kenny? Like, if you think that the rest has led to him being pulled 2 times in a row, then
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that he has had rest. That's why I would play him on Wednesday.
Well, yeah, sure, yeah, and maybe that's the case. And I'm saying that I think you let Brossoit go out in that game, play against his former team, and then you put Hellebuck back in. But let it stew a bit then for Hellebuck. And I don't think it even has to stew for Hellebuck. But it's not. You're not doing it for Hellebuck. You're doing it for the team, because the problem here right now is they're not going to have Ehlers, and we don't know when Adam Lowry's coming back. It's going to be a tough slog. You know, it's going to be hard to break this 4-game losing streak on Wednesday right now. I mean, maybe they find the right concoction of things. Maybe the guys dig deep and figure it out. But right now, unless you prove it to me, I'm not seeing it. So, and to me, Brossoit played well in the third period. Let him build upon that. He needs to play too. Give Hellebuck the rest and let it stew a little bit for Hellebuck, for the betterment of the team, not just for him. Because, like you said earlier, the Jets need basically brilliant goaltending if this isn't going to happen, and they need to get that down the stretch, let Hellebuck run into the playoffs with a few consecutive starts to keep them going. But I just think I don't see maybe the Jets pull it out on Wednesday, but I don't know. I didn't see anything tonight to suggest that they're going to play much better that day, unless they dig deep, whatever that actually means. I mean, why didn't they dig deep tonight then? But that's another thing. So.
Just one quick thing, Sean, before you jump in. Hang on. It just, for me, you don't want Hellebuck's last memory of the Oilers to be pulled in the last game before he faces them in the playoffs.
Maybe
so that's why I would play him. And the other thing about that, too, we talk about trying to find solutions. This is about trying to help Connor Hellebuck find a solution on how to beat the Oilers if you have to see them in 3 weeks' time.
Well, his solution to beating the Oilers is not letting Connor McDavid in on breakaways and not letting that's not on Connor McDavid.
It's not on Hellebuck. No, I agree. But the Jets' best chance right now with a depleted lineup of snapping a losing streak is with an elite level performance between the pipes. Yeah, and I think that Connor Hellebuck is going to produce that on Wednesday.
All right.
You know what? I'll go back to this. I mean, to your idea, Kenny, of the workload that he's had. I wonder, though, down the stretch, if there's any purpose in trying to get him rest, because we know that at the end of the season there's going to be a little bit of a gap before the playoffs start. He's going to be able to get his rest there, and if he's not going to be able to build up and rest there, then the damage is probably already done. I entirely agree with you at this stage. Having seen him pulled in 2 of his last 3 starts, it's about managing him mentally, and I don't know the answer to that question. The answer for him, I mean, maybe he does need some time off. Maybe he needs to be hungry. I don't necessarily think that this is a situation where he needs to come back hungry from, because to your point, Ken, this wasn't his fault tonight. This was a team that entirely abandoned him out there, and I don't know if he comes away from that and feels like he has something to prove. Again, I know he's the goalie who thinks he can stop every shot. And maybe if you talked with him tonight, he'd go home and he'd be like, man, I really let my team down tonight. I don't think anyone else in the world is going to think that. But to me, down the stretch here, it's entirely about managing, to your point, their very best asset at this stage. It's starting to look like if they're going to turn this around, it's going to be on the back of a goaltender who can steal them a couple of games. And if they can't really get it turned around, it seems that their hope in the playoffs is going to be squarely on his shoulders and in his pads. Guys, is there anything you want to talk about before we go? Because we should be getting to shut it down. And I cannot believe they ran that helicopter the entire hour that we've been here. It is just, they better have the best ice in the league after this. But anything you guys want to touch on before we go specifically?
Go ahead, Kenny.
No, I'm good.
You don't have anything to say?
I've had plenty to say.
For
there you go.
Let's let him go.
Parting thoughts, Scotty. Go for it.
I think this team needs to come out on Wednesday and show something, because I think a lot of their season depends on them. They know if it's 10 to 15 games, if that's what it is. I don't think there was a closed door meeting tonight. They were pretty much on the Zoom call at regular time. I think next game says a lot about this team's actual identity, because you have to dig deep here, and you can't wait, because if somebody goes down in the playoffs, are you going to have a repeat of last year's bubble? Are you going to have a repeat of the playoffs before that? My birthday will be fine. It's ruined every year because I get older. But anyways,
nothing wrong with getting older, buddy. Nothing wrong with getting older,
especially with this vaccine stuff. The older I get, the quicker I get, the quicker I'll get a vaccine.
You're the only unvaccinated one on this show right now.
I am, yeah. I'm young, and that's the only thing I got going for me at this point. Yeah. So, no, but I think Wednesday's game is a big game for this team, because this team hasn't dealt with a lot of adversity this year. Any adversity they have dealt, they've done it with a very healthy, a reasonably healthy lineup, and they need to show something, because if they don't on Wednesday, I'm talking in absolutes here, but I think something needs to be shown here to show that you can weather a storm and you can stop it even when it gets a little longer than it has to be. Because if you lose 4 straight in the playoffs, it's over, right? And I think that's it. So. That would be my final thought. They need to play better, and they need to do it now, because the longer it bleeds, the harder it is to heal. wound, and I think it's going to be that was some philosophy right there. But anyways,
guys,
philosophizer. You're a philosophizer.
Guys, I said I was going to leave you, but I can't let you go. I got to ask one last thing. It popped into my mind here.
All right.
On a night like tonight, I still think that this was a worse outing than the 7-1 loss to the Montreal Canadiens.
Yes.
I think this was their worst game of the year. Do either of you have any issue with the fact that no letter came out to address this in the media tonight, that they sent out Andrew Kopp, who's a good speaker, and Paul Stastny, who's a good speaker? Is it a problem that we did not hear from Wheeler, Morrissey, or Scheifele tonight?
I mean, I think they threw them out. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kenny.
No, not for me. I mean, those guys spoke plenty in the last couple of losses, and also Scheifele spoke in the morning. I don't know what else. I mean, again, you got two of the smart guys that are part of the leadership core. I don't think that that's an issue whatsoever.
Yeah, I think if anything, I think I'm not going to say it was planned or that they did this in a good way, but I think they're showing that there's other guys here that also can say the right thing and even maybe not say the right thing. Sometimes I think what Andrew Kopp said tonight, well, it's a little bit baffling. I think there's some honesty in what he said, and same with Paul Stastny. And I think it's not a bad thing to show those things and have those guys come out. I mean, what was Mark going to say? I mean, no offense to Mark, but he doesn't always say a ton. And Blake Wheeler can be in a poor mood after games like this, and you don't really get a read on anything. I think you got a better read tonight, anyways, on those two guys. That's maybe more of a selfish thing than anything that we got to see that. That was probably a good thing. I don't think you get much out of the letters tonight, and Josh Morrissey is going to say, well, let's not make it 5, right? Like, whatever. Like, that doesn't tell us anything. I think that the guys can... Aristotle. The big Aristotle.
Guys, I agree with you. The Kopp and Stastny do a good job of saying the right thing, as do you gentlemen do a great job of saying the right things on this show and getting the opinions out that I hope we're a little cathartic for the audience out there tonight. I know that was a frustrating one. That's 2 frustrating ones in a row. We appreciate you spending your time and coming, giving us your takes, your questions. Hopefully you were able to vent. I know that we were. I feel a lot better after spending all this time with everyone here. So thank you so much for your time. And we hope to see you on our post-game show after the next game coming up Wednesday. Once again, their last crack, the Winnipeg Jets against the Edmonton Oilers. So come check us out exactly where you're watching it now. If you haven't gone to our YouTube and subscribed, go there, do that, smash the like button, smash the subscribe so we can keep getting you all this content. And one last thing, we do our Instagram live before the games, 45 minutes before the games. We'll be doing that on Wednesday as well. Thank you so much for staying up late with us. We enjoyed your time. Hope you enjoyed ours. Thank you.